I never thought I was pretty, really. I mean, it's only been a few years that people started saying to me that I was pretty. I mean, I never felt like I was a very pretty girl.
Imagine being the very definition of perfection. Icy blue eyes that could stop a room, golden hair that shimmered under the catwalk lights, and a body so flawless it became the global standard of beauty. Imagine earning $10,000 a day just to exist in front of a camera. Karen Mulder wasn't just a supermodel. She was a phenomenon, the original Victoria's Secret angel, the woman who first wore the iconic wings in 1998. She was the living Barbie, but then she spoke and everything changed. At the height of her fame, she looked straight into a camera and exposed the darkest truths of the fashion world, about power, about being used, discarded, and silenced. She risked everything, her career, her reputation, her legacy, to tell the truth. And how did the world respond? They didn't listen. They dismissed her. And worst of all, Karen was hospitalized, labeled mentally unstable, branded as delusional, declared mentally retarded by media headlines, and the industry that once worshipped her beauty turned its back on her the moment she used her voice. On December 10, 2002, Karen was found unconscious in her Paris apartment after an overdose of sleeping pills. She had fallen into a coma. Today, as new generations uncover what really happens behind the velvet curtains of fashion, one thing becomes painfully clear. The world owes Karen Mulder an apology.
Many of her contemporaries are now idolized as supermodels and focused on building fashion dynasties. But Karen Mulder's career vanished from the spotlight around the beginning of the new millennium.
Are these dolls for little girls or for big boys? Which one has bigger boobies?
That's very personal. See like 20 girls half naked.
There's a big panel that shows your butt.
The tragic story of Karen Mulder. Chapter 1. Early Life and Discovery. Karen Mulder was born on June 1, 1970, in the small, peaceful town of Vlaardingen, Netherlands. Her father worked as a tax inspector, and her mother as a secretary. There were no flashing lights, no fashion magazines stacked in her room, no obsession with becoming a star. Karen wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing the wind in her hair. She dreamed of a quiet life by the sea, simple, calm, far away from anything resembling a runway. But destiny, as it often does, had something entirely different in store. At just 15 years old, during a family vacation to the south of France, Karen's life took a sudden turn. It started with a poster, an ad for Elite Model Management's Look of the Year contest. She paused, thought about it, but quickly brushed it off. But her friends? They saw what she didn't. Without telling her, they sent in her photos. And guess what? Karen didn't just get noticed. She made it all the way to the finals and ended up as second place in the entire international competition. The shy Dutch teenager with braces had just stepped onto the world stage, but not everyone celebrated her win. Her parents were far from thrilled about this sudden modeling dream. Karen later admitted her father wanted her to be an accountant, a stable, serious profession. But this was only the beginning. Karen Mulder was about to become one of the biggest names in fashion, and world would soon watch her rise like a superstar. Within just 2 years of being discovered, Karen Mulder had become one of the most in-demand faces in fashion. She wasn't just booking jobs. She was everywhere. Designers like Valentino, Yves Saint Laurent, Giorgio Armani. Every major house wanted her. She became the new obsession, the golden girl, and by the time she turned 18, Karen had already landed her first Vogue cover. After that, it was like an avalanche. Magazine after magazine, campaign after campaign. But even for someone as poised and graceful as Karen, the early days were far from perfect. There were moments that stayed with her. Karen had this ethereal presence, sculpted features, radiant blonde hair, and a walk so fluid it looked unreal. The industry began calling her the real-life Barbie. And honestly, she fit the title like no one else, so much so that in 1995, Karen was literally turned into a Barbie doll, immortalized alongside icons like Naomi Campbell and Claudia Schiffer. But behind the glimmering lights and whirlwind press cycles, Karen was quietly exploring a world beyond fabric and flashbulbs. She was an artist in her own right, someone who deeply desired to express herself through more than just the way she wore a designer dress. In 2001, she took a surprising detour from the catwalk. Karen ventured into the world of music, a realm that often gets side-eyed when entered by models, yet one she approached with sincerity and heart. In 2002, she released a cover single of Gloria Gaynor's defiant anthem, "I Am What I Am." It wasn't just a novelty track. Karen's rendition climbed to number 13 on the French music charts.
I am what I am. I am my own special creation.
Chapter 2. The Dark Side of Glamour. Though Karen's image radiated effortless grace and poise, beneath that polished surface was a woman carefully holding herself together in an industry that had no interest in protecting the people it exploited. While her public persona was warm, professional, and unfailingly polite, behind closed doors, Karen struggled with the immense pressures and psychological toll of life in fashion's fast lane. She was known for being punctual, gracious, and low maintenance, qualities that made her a favorite among designers and photographers alike. In a sea of supermodels infamous for their demands and diva moments, Karen stood out for her humility and consistency, but she also had clear boundaries. She valued her personal space fiercely and kept her inner circle small. "The only one I see regularly," she once admitted in an interview, "is Carla Bruni." That distance spoke volumes. Even at the height of her fame, Karen instinctively knew the cost of getting too close to a world that saw her as a product. Her personal life mirrored the emotional complexities of her professional one. At just 18 years old, she married French photographer René Besson. For a teenager navigating the brutal world of high fashion, it was perhaps a search for grounding, but the relationship didn't last long. The marriage ended in 1993. The same year her life took yet another dramatic turn. While waiting for a flight in a Paris airport lounge, Karen crossed paths with Jean-Yves Le Fur, a real estate developer. Sparks flew, and the two quickly became engaged. Their whirlwind romance was splashed across tabloids, celebrated by fans, and admired by fashion insiders. They were seen as the 90s power couple no one saw coming. But, as with many high-profile relationships, the pressure was immense. Yet even as she soared professionally, Karen's heart remained rooted in kindness. In 1995, still very much at the peak of her modeling fame, she purchased a chateau in the French countryside. But rather than turn it into a secluded celebrity retreat, she used it to establish a holiday program for underprivileged children. She opened the doors of her glamorous world to kids who had never seen anything like it. It wasn't a PR move. There were no photo ops, just a quiet act of generosity from a woman who had seen enough darkness to know what light could mean. Chapter 3. The Whistleblower. In 2001, Karen appeared on the French talk show Tout le monde en parle. What was supposed to be a standard celebrity interview turned into a public reckoning. On live television, Karen laid bare some of the industry's darkest, most chilling secrets. She claimed that her former modeling agency, Elite Model Management, had tried to push her into prostitution. She alleged that she had been drugged, hypnotized, and manipulated by people in power. And she didn't stop there. In a moment that sent shockwaves through France and beyond, Karen accused members of European royalty, including Prince Albert of Monaco, of involvement in a larger system of abuse and exploitation. The world wasn't ready to hear her. Within hours, the media moved to silence her. The interview was buried, tapes disappeared, headlines dismissed her as delusional. She was forced to publicly retract her statements. And then came the most devastating blow. She was admitted into a psychiatric hospital, where she spent 5 months. Suddenly, the woman who had once been celebrated for her beauty and poise was being labeled as unstable. Her apology to Prince Albert, an apology many believe was forced, was held up as proof that she had been lying. But those who knew the fashion industry closely began to whisper. Years later, the whispers became shouts. The Me Too movement, the countless allegations, the lawsuits, One by one, they began to confirm what Karen had tried to warn the world about. Her words, once discarded as madness, now ring with eerie accuracy. She was not hysterical. She was not broken. She was first. And the truth is, the world owes her more than just a second listen. It owes her an apology. After her revelations, Karen's career collapsed. Fashion houses distanced themselves. Magazines stopped calling. The woman who had once defined glamour was now treated like a liability, and the emotional toll was unbearable. On December 10, 2002, Karen was found unconscious in her Paris apartment after an overdose of sleeping pills. She had fallen into a coma. There was no note, no message, just silence. It was her ex-fiancé, Jean-Yves Le Fur, who noticed something was wrong and rushed to find her. He, along with Karen's parents, stayed by her side as she was rushed to the American Hospital of Paris. Miraculously, she survived, but the incident marked a breaking point, a moment where her pain spilled past the boundaries she had spent years trying to protect. In 2006, she quietly welcomed a new chapter, motherhood. She gave birth to a daughter named Anna. Karen never revealed the identity of Anna's father, choosing instead to shield her child from the spotlight that had once consumed her. She made a brief return to fashion in 2007, walking in a Dior show alongside her legendary peers Naomi Campbell and Linda Evangelista. The crowd erupted, but something had changed. The magic was dimmer. Karen wasn't the same. She had been through too much. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The story didn't end there. In 2009, Karen's name hit headlines again, this time for allegedly threatening her plastic surgeon over the phone after a botched procedure. The details were hazy, but the narrative was familiar. The fallen beauty, the mental health questions, the media frenzy. But to anyone paying attention, it was just another chapter in a long story of a woman pushed beyond her limits by an industry that demanded her perfection and punished her humanity. Today, Karen Mulder lives far from the fashion world that once adored her and then turned its back on her. She rarely gives interviews. She keeps to herself. But in her rare public appearances, there's a quiet strength in her eyes, like someone who has finally reclaimed her peace. Karen Mulder gave the world beauty, elegance, and truth. She warned us when no one else dared. And instead of being applauded, she was silenced, broken, and nearly erased from the very industry she helped define. But her story deserves more than silence. It demands remembrance. To the younger generation, this is your moment to honor her. Karen wasn't just a supermodel. She was a whistleblower, a truth teller, a woman who risked everything to expose what the world wasn't ready to face. In an era where courage is often posted but rarely lived, Karen lived it, fully, fiercely. And now, it's on us to speak her name, to share her story with friends and family, to ensure that what happened to her never happens again. Because when history rewrites its list of icons, survivors, and revolutionaries, Karen Mulder's name doesn't just belong there. It belongs at the very top.